Hello, Laura Christiansen. Welcome to our episode of Shop Talk on sports medicine. I'm so happy to have you here. We got some electrifying things to talk about.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And I have to say, sports medicine has never been my number one draw, and yet so many things that I am knowledgeable about are applicable in that domain. So thanks.
You're welcome. Well, actually, I don't know if that's really true because we have to hold a sec. Can you hear a jet going by right now?
I heard it. I think it's over now.
We're going to have to edit this piece out. This is really frustrating. I'm going to start over with this so we can just edit this whole piece out. And we'll just say everything that we've just said. Here we go. Laura Christiansen, welcome to this electrifying conversation on sports medicine.
Thanks so much, Michael. I always love chatting with you, whether it's on a Sunday night at 9:30 or in this kind of environment. And this is so exciting for me because I've never thought of myself as a sports medicine person. And yet the kinds of things that I treat every day for over 30 years in my clinic are exactly the same kinds of things that athletes are bringing for care. So thanks so much for letting me share what I've learned.
Yes, well, I'm delighted to have you. And yes, you treat farmers, you treat people that do hard physical labor. I mean, you treat people that use and injure their bodies, and they need to recover quickly. So today, the topic is microcurrent. And this is something I've heard about over the years. I've seen the machines advertised in the different magazines. You and I have chatted a bit about it over the years because look, you've got this long background in Chinese medicine. You graduated, what, in 1984 or something ridiculous like that? Yeah, you've been at this a while. So I like hanging out with you because, man, you've gone in so many different directions. I know you've looked at electricity a bit. Look, for me, electricity is basically magic, and I don't know much about it. Something about amps and volts and, don't lick a light socket. What are the basics that your average acupuncturist needs to know about microcurrent? And for that matter, Laura, why microcurrent? I'm an American. I tend to think more is gooder. So what's the deal with microcurrent?
Well, so, we all know if you stick your finger in an electric socket, you could die because it's current that kills. Electricity is not dangerous. Electricity it all depends on parameters. And so, we all have this idea electricity is damaging to the body. Well,
it can be.
Yeah, so high amperage is what's damaging. And amperage is current. And if you all took high school physics, you remember V equals IR, that's the equation. So voltage equals current times resistance. And so that's really sort of the foundational concept here. Now, milliamp current is the one that we've been using in our EDOs and our, AQX7J that we got 40 years ago from China. Those are all run by a 9-volt battery, and the FDA regulates them to a 27-volt output, which is safe. And the problem with those is they have high amounts of current, and they also have kind of not nice waveforms, not nice for the body. And in microcurrent, we're dealing with 1,000 times less current.
That's like homeopathic.
Well, it is in a sense because what milliamp current is doing is like forcing the body to respond. We're making muscles twitch and we're doing all the things. And, we have seen research out of China since 1949 based on very solid animal models that were then done again in human studies. And so we know what frequencies do what to which neurotransmitters and what frequencies are good for anti-inflammatory and all that. However, the advantage of microcurrent is that what it's doing is it's speaking to the physiology and saying, hey, you know what to do. Now go ahead and do it. And so that's really different from like, I'm going to force you to do a thing. And the other thing is that our microcurrent devices that are dedicated to this usually have beautiful waveforms that are very physiologically copacetic. Like the body says, oh, yeah, that's nice. I like it. So, yeah, that's all that. Current.
Can you say just a little bit about those waveforms? What makes them more pleasurable to the body? I know when I've had electroacupuncture, it's like, okay, it's like someone's twisting a needle, except it's jarring and a little bit nervy. But you get plenty of stimulation.
Well, stimulation. So you remember that they invented these devices in China to twirl the needle because they needed needle twirling to go on through a whole surgery or something. And in those days, they plugged the thing in the wall. Of course, now we're isolated from the wall, which is nice. But the sine wave, again, it's calculus and geometry and all that. It's a beautiful sort of curved wave.
Yeah, it's a yin-yang wave.
Yeah, exactly. It is the just natural oscillation that we find all throughout nature. Whereas a lot of these older devices are generating a square wave or a sawtooth wave. And I don't want to get in too much to the frequency of sound, but it's high harmonics that make it have those little corners. And those are the things the body doesn't like so much. So the sine wave doesn't have any harmonics like that. And so it's just a happier, more natural kind of pattern.
All right. So, all right, we're putting electricity in the body. Where? How? And really, for what reason?
Well, if you all have the same patients I do, which I think you do, you might have discovered, if you've been in practice for a minute, that regular old acupuncture doesn't always accomplish what we need. Right? The patient comes back, they're not progressing. We know they're probably toxic, their diet isn't perfect, they're not hydrated, all the things. They won't take their herbs, but we're seeing them not responding the way we want. And if you're like me and you have to have successes in your clinic to keep your doors open,
I think that's pretty much all of us.
yeah, we need to find the best tools to accomplish change so that patients say, yeah. So, in the service of that question, especially because my patients tend to be older people, less healthy people, I started to investigate electrical acupuncture just before COVID. And I discovered just a wealth of information, really strongly research-based, and a ton of development that we've already done about what frequencies affect what neurotransmitters, what kind of anti-inflammatory chemicals, what kind of enkephalins can we stimulate. And so when our patient is tired, when they have an injury, post-surgical, awesome for that. Or just like regulating the autonomic nervous system. Using electrical frequencies to do that is extremely effective, far more than just plain old needles by themselves. So that's why. Now, we can apply acupuncture locally to, say, an inflamed joint. Just last night, I treated a knee on a man who is about to go back on the pickleball court, and he wants to make sure he doesn't restrain his MCL. And sure, liver meridian, we can add electrons there. So electrons preferentially pass through fascia because fascia is a highly conductive tissue. It's like water that has a bunch of salt in it, and it passes electrons well. And most of the fascial planes that we know about pass along what is basically the acupuncture channels. And we've seen through research that the acupuncture channels carry electrons in the direction of the point numbers from lowest to highest, except for the Ren.
So it basically goes through what we consider to be the natural flow of qi in the channel.
It does. And also it loves to go on periosteum. So it loves to go on the coverings of bones, the coverings of blood vessels, and the coverings of nerves. That's where fascia really is dense. And so you have to think of it this way. Electricity is food for nerves. I always tell my patients, you got two things. You got electrons, you got earth. That's what it's all made of, right? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We're all made of earth assembled with electrons, and electrons are doing all of this, moving things around. And so this idea that electrons are dangerous is just silly business.
Again, in a certain context, they will kill you. But in another context, they will heal you.
Correct. Electrons are always healing you. That's the only thing there is. There's nothing else here. Electrons and earth. That's it. Fire and earth. And so when we have the correct devices and we have the correct understanding of where best to put the inputs, then we can strategically design programs that are much more effective. And so we could use electrons to add energy to regular acupuncture points, like spleen 6, Yahoo, right? We're going to affect a lot of things there. Or we can put electrons in scalp acupuncture needles or ear needles. Or we can put them around a joint or, any other kind of idea you could come up with.
Areas of injury, would they be especially attracted to that?
Yeah, exactly.
Or is it just that it's in the stream?
Yeah, water flows downhill, right? So electrons in the body float from highest resources to lowest. And when there's an injury, we know that tissue is attracting electrons. You can see that with an acutigraph test. And so any part of the body, any channel, any location that's trying to restore itself increases in electronegativity because the body naturally pulls electrons to an injury or an area that is in need of restoration. So this is another reason why we need to add electrons to every single treatment, because all of our patients are deficient. Who would have thought?
Yeah. So it's kind of a thinking in terms of Chinese medicine. It's like a qi tonification.
Precisely. It is. Now, one of the things that has been a little bit surprising in my investigation was to learn about a piece of research that was extremely telling. And so the researcher is Chung, and the article was 1982, and he found...
1982? This is before you even graduated from acupuncture school.
Yeah, it was my last year in college. And Chung did a bunch of research on this involving milliamp current, which is our conventional machines. And he discovered that you can increase that a small amount of milliamp current under 1 millivolt will increase ATP in the cells in the mitochondria. And it will also help heal injuries. But as soon as you get above that 1 volt or more current, you're actually starting to see a decrease in ATP availability and a decrease in tissue healing. And so when we hook our conventional milliamp current devices onto an athlete and we turn it up and we're like making the muscles twitch and all, we are actually reducing their ATP availability so they can't restore themselves when they're exhausted. And we're reducing the phenomena around tissue healing. And so I actually had heard this from one of the better-known electroacupuncture teachers, but when I saw the actual research, it really blew my mind. Conversely, microcurrent increases ATP in the body. That means supports mitochondrial function, supports detoxification. It also supports all kinds of tissue regeneration, immune system function, all the things that our injured athletes and fatigued athletes need to support restoration of function and healing of damaged tissue. So this to me was like very, very helpful in putting some perspective on the situation. And also sort of like the alarm bells went off, like, whoa, that Ito that you prize is got a kind of a narrow range of application. Yeah, sorry.
This is again and again and again, I come back to perhaps one of the greatest, most wise books ever written was Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I'm not kidding. Like who needs what at what time? What's appropriate for Papa Bear? What's appropriate for Baby Bear? Too hot, too cold, too much, too little. And when I think of athletes are tough and they, no pain, no gain. They love to train hard. They like going to those edges, like, oh, pain, like, bring it, right? I can eat the pain.
Yeah, they say, turn up the device more. My muscle's not twitching enough.
Turn up the device, load me up with needles. Even our regular patients will often say it. And so it sounds, Laura, like it's incredibly important to have people recognize you're not going to feel this, and that means it's working. That's a little bit of a tricky hard sell. What else can you tell them to help them get this idea?
Well, I use an accugraph at the first visit with every patient, and I use it really differently from the way it's meant to be used. But it gives us a starting point snapshot of like what are the electrical resources in all the channels. And then I can show the patient, like, look here, all of your channels are good except Tai Yang. I had one of these last night, which was sky high. And this guy has got urinary bladder channel, just terrible posterior chain blockage. And when I showed him that, I said, see, we're seeing electrically that your UB channel is trying to fix itself. And so this has got to be our focus because the rest of you is awesome healthy. And so he's like, oh, I guess I really need to work on that. And I say, yeah. And then we'll test you along the way, and then we'll be able to see how everything is getting better. It's not easy for me to tell patients you won't feel anything because they think that if they're not feeling something, that they're going to not get anything. And sometimes they say, turn it up, I can't feel it.
Exactly. My point exactly.
Yeah, but so I'm just going to show a couple of the devices. This is one of the devices I use, and it's a 500 volt stimulator, microcurrent, developed by the Avasia people. Jerry Tennant was involved in this, and John Haish. And the output, these are actually meant to be like used at home. This is sort of a thing you can like rub it on your neck. But what we do is we convert it to acupuncture needles with a big wire and 4 alligator clips. But you see right here, these 2 resistors. These are 60 kilo ohm resistors from Meridian Technology in Idaho. And so we put these resistors in here intentionally to step down the current to such a tiny current.
So this is already a microcurrent device?
Yeah, it already is.
It's already a microcurrent device, but you're putting these Tell me about putting the resistors. What do they do again?
V equals IR. We're reducing the current. It's like we're making the hole smaller that the electrons are flowing through. That's resistor.
Okay, I can understand that.
But it has a 500 volt battery behind. So these electrons have a ton of wattage, which is electricity doing work. So we want to shoot electrons into the body with lots of energy so they can go and do all the things.
So high energy electrons. So, okay, let me ask this question. This is a little bit geeky. Some electrons could have more energy. Some electrons could have less energy. They don't all carry the same energy?
The electron energy is given by the battery that's behind them. V equals IR. So the voltage and the current that we can produce, the voltage is the battery, and the current is the output. So the more resistors we put, the more it steps down the current because they have this counterbalancing relationship because the voltage is the same.
So you're just like trickling.
I'm shooting 500 volts through a tiny, tiny hose.
Mm-hmm.
And because the hose is so small, the electrons are going harder. Time to review your physics, Michael.
Yeah, well, I didn't really study it well in the first place. So this is a remedial physics for Michael.
This is the other device that I use. Now, this is the Pointo Select, which some of us know as a point finder for the ear. But the Meridian Tech people have gotten together with EAI, as it's now called, to create a stimulator attachment that replaces the point detector. And this is the same. It long white wire. It outputs to 2 resistors, and then I've got 4 alligator clips here.
Okay.
So I will often put almost always one device on 4 body points so that I'm doing constitutional strengthening. And spleen 6, stomach 36, triple burner 5, pericardium 6, heart 3, whatever you like for good stuff. And then I'll use another device to work on the problem at hand, like a knee pain or maybe scalp acupuncture or ear points or whatever I want to do. So I always do kind of a constitutional boosting treatment plus electricity for the branch problem.
So you have 2 different electrical setups on a single patient?
Or 3 or 4 or 5. Well, because I only have 4 needles. So if I'm doing peripheral neuropathy, I got to do 8 needles on each foot, plus I have to work on the proximal nerves. So I'm working on the posterior tibialis, for example, and the common peroneal. So then I usually use 3 devices on each patient. And sometimes I add the sensory nerve cortex up here, so I'll then add a 4th device on the head to do that. I'm all about it.
This is fascinating, and I wish we had more time. Let me just review this really quick, make sure that I think I have it, okay? You've got one device that you're using basically for an overall constitutional, and you're going to use, well, just whatever points you think are useful for them, constitutionally speaking.
Yeah.
And then the other is more focused on treatment. Maybe there's a tendon that has been strained or ruptured. Maybe there's a surgery you're trying to heal. There's, something that got banged up or bashed up. And so you're going to that specifically. And then there might even be ancillary stuff, but at least those 2 things, something constitutional and something symptomatic, kind of like Japanese acupuncture, root treatment and branch treatment.
Precisely. And, I have a big background in Japanese acupuncture. One of the things that I also wanted to say is that this finding that using a milliamp device on an athlete at high intensity that can really undermine their progress or their health, that's super important to remember here. And I wanted to say that the Pantheon device that does have microcurrent, it doesn't really provide the same kind of quality and parameters of the dedicated milliamp current devices. So, I suppose you could ask John about that, but that's basically, I think, an important thing to remember. Yeah.
I was wondering about that because I have a machine that does the regular, what is it, micro, milli, and milli, and then there's a setting for micro. But I look at machines like that and go, how well does it do anything? If it does a bunch of things, how well does it do any one thing?
Sure, but in that device, all they did was they just added an electronic component to step down the current to 1,000th of the amount. Now, I want to say that in all of these devices, micro, you can use the same frequencies that you already know from milliamp world. And so that's a really nice transfer if you already know some of the different frequencies to use, like 10 hertz for musculoskeletal, 1 to 5 hertz for pain management. There are frequencies for all the neurotransmitters and anti-inflammatory and all that kind of stuff. So it's very transferable.
Very transferable. You're just stepping it down you're going to do more with less.
Well, you're going to do, yes.
Now, you mentioned Jerry Tennant, and I'm not familiar with him, but he seems to be involved in this somehow. Could you say a little bit about him?
Well, Dr. Tennant wrote a book called Healing is Voltage. I remember seeing him at a Kiko seminar 20 years ago. He was an eye surgeon who developed viral meningitis as a result of treating patients. And he was in bed for something like 10 years. And during that time, he really read medicine. And he realized that electricity was the thing that was needed for treating illness. And he has a whole world of that. And he also became committed to the application of microcurrent. And he sells setups for patients to charge up their own meridians and so on. And he's in his 80s now. He's an incredibly generous man, and there are lots of great YouTube videos out there. And so I would say that his commitment to this notion has been a big part of what convinced me, because he used the acupuncture meridian system as his model, and he also researched it to be sure that what he said was true. And I completely trust him. And so, yeah, he's been one of my big influence.
Okay, good to know. And a bunch of stuff on YouTube. Maybe you could send us a couple of YouTubes of him that you like, and we'll put it on the show notes page.
Well, that's a great idea.
Is that a good idea? And what about you? What are you doing? I mean, besides helping patients, are you teaching this? What are you doing with this?
Yeah, I'm in the teaching stage of my career, and I already have I already have a little series of classes based on how to apply electroacupuncture. But I have developed a basic, introductory course for listeners here to this podcast, and I'll be making a link to that available. So my domain is lcacupunctureseminars.com. That should be easy to remember. lcacupunctureseminars.com, all one word.
It'll be on the show notes page with everything else.
Yeah, and there you will find my course offerings and a link to this microcurrent intro course. Plus, I think there's a freebie on there about like how to think about the difference between milli and microcurrent if you need a nice visual on the subject for your own clinical application.
Yes, or in my case, my remedial physics.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. Man, I always come away from these conversations with something like, oh, I want to go experiment in clinic, but now I can actually feel like a mad scientist.
Yeah. Yeah. Or a happy scientist.
That's right.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I love talking to your audience.
It's always fun. All right, Laura, till next time.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
When practitioners reach for a Chai Hu Guizhi Tang or Shao Qing Long Tang, they need quality that they can trust. Lhasa OMS supplies the herbs your clinic needs to be ready for the cold and flu season. Visit Lhasa OMS to source the classical formulas featured in this series. Use the code REMEDY20 for 20% off your next purchase at lhasaoms.com. Some exclusions apply. See the website for details. That's it for this episode of Shop Talk. Did you learn something that brought a patient to mind? Don't keep a good thing to yourself. Share it with a friend. They'll be happy that you did. And tune in again for our next episode of Shop Talk.